Okay, here we go. Whiskey and Barbells. Here we go. Yeah, these are always fun. Again, we're both our own bosses, so no one needs to know what time it is, but it's going to make for a good conversation. Now, let's dive right into it. We've had you on here before, so we don't got to do any crazy introductions. We're going to talk powerlifting. I'm going to ask you almost a philosophical question to kick it off. What makes a powerlifter to you? Can anyone call themselves a powerlifter?
I would say yes. I feel like it's like being a powerlifter is more of the mindset of just having I would say like desire to be like better. And the nice thing about powerlifting is that like everything's objectiful. Like, what can I say? Like the word, like you can objectify like the weight in which you're lifting. Like, for example, if you see yourself like squatting 225 and then you see yourself squatting 275, like you can definitely see that progress. So I think anybody can be a powerlifter in the sense that it allows you to have goals that you can work towards, and if the progress might be slow and steady, but like you're working towards it. So I'd say like anybody can have that powerlifter. It's just more the mindset of like wanting to have self-improvement with objectable measurements.
Objective measures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, like it's funny because you can get it in some other sports, and I used to have that mindset a little bit in boxing. Bodybuilders can be like that, and that hey, if you're not doing a competition, are you doing it? And it's like, no, man. Like I mean, you don't have to be so like grabby about the title. And especially as a trainer, I want people to explore fitness without the concerns of competition and then self competition. That's actually the point that every powerlifter or bodybuilder knows that when they go to those competitions, they're actually very individualized to you versus you. You can't control certain variables, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Now, at a higher end, or when you actually can compete, there are going to be skills that you showed me in our competition that you can make sure you're shifting the numbers and play the game. But during the training, it's you versus you. Like it is 99% you versus you. So anyone can actually and should be measuring it that way. And it doesn't even matter if it's a perfect power lift. Maybe you don't want to do a full deadlift. You're doing a rack pull or a trap bar. That's fine, right? The thing that you mentioned, though, is objective standards that you're trying to measure and trying to achieve from, right? Even when someone is doing, say, a back squat, it's actually something I always have a challenge with, understanding what I should give someone as a standardization for if they want to improve it, but they have no goals in powerlifting. Is like, is parallel the rule for everyone? And I would love to know your view on that. So let's say someone's not going to be a powerlifter. Is parallel required for someone to benefit from the back squat?
I wouldn't say, I would like to say, because I am in the sports, I would say that like that standard of parallel or below parallel like would should be like the standard. However, I understand like these are the standards for a specific sport that I've been coaching, so it doesn't necessarily need to be the standard for the entire general like population.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, like if someone is like not at the health standard that they want, maybe them going to a parallel squat like isn't the objective. Maybe them going down like a good range of motion to them,
Mm-hmm.
that's a win in itself. And then they can work on like increasing the mobility, increasing the range of motion. I so it just depends on the individual and like what they're working towards. I wouldn't say like it's a standard. Though I will say the one nice thing about having a parallel squat or like slightly below parallel squat is that it's easier to measure progress per se, because if you're squatting and you're not hitting an exact like distance every time, and maybe your repetitions are maybe
Mm-hmm.
inconsistent, some are a bit higher, some a bit lower, it's kind of a little bit harder to justify or to measure progress. So I would say like it's not a requirement to have powerlifting standard depth if you're the average gym person. I would just say it is a nice thing because it allows you to track progress a lot better.
A lot more conclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. Because some people that is the scary depth in the squat, and that's what I tell people who I also amplify the same message. You don't have to if you're not trying to be a power lifter. You don't have to, but if you want to have something consistent and measurable, then you probably want to aim for that parallel.
Absolutely.
And there probably is still benefits to it, even in sport or life. I think where you get 90 to 80% of your benefits, like Pareto's principles, like where do you get most of your benefits in a squat? And it's like, well, we can't have too high of a squat. And I would kind of pull from a guy who a lot of people really hate. I'm not sure if you follow or have seen his stuff on social media. Is Joel Seedman. He's known as the 90-degree guy. So he believes that 90-degree angles, if you load that, that's where you avoid injury, but you can actually get all the benefits. And I think he's certainly not 100% right, because he has crazy shit that he actually talks about, and he has very little research to back it up. But I think there's a foundational principle that can be utilized, and that's why you see some powerlifters use rack pull or blocks, right? Because you can load the joint angle if you load the joint right near peak tension, it probably has most of the benefits. And so my thought when I look, sometimes I'm training a mom that we're happy that she's doing a back squat at all on a Smith machine. Like, it's not even perfect, but she's doing something. And she has like not perfect knees. So it's like, does her knee, and this is an important thing that people don't realize, parallel doesn't mean 90 degrees. The knee joint and the hip joint going 90 degrees is actually keeping your hips probably 2 to 3 inches above parallel, depending on your anatomy.
Yeah.
And so if I see her get 90 degrees in the hip, a little bit past 90 degrees in the knee, you're past the peak tension that I'd be concerned about for that joint for that heavy load. Now, in a later exercise, please try to get the deep range of motion with lightly loaded weights. Like, do a single leg movement that's lightly loaded. Do other very heavily knee bended exercises that you can get lower in that deep angle where you want your body to be able to express the full range of motion. But if you're doing a heavy load and you just want the force, I think it's beneficial. And you mentioned about objective standards. A little tip for people, I would say, it's like similar to a rack pull could actually limit the range of motion, still get a benefit, but then maybe a box squat, right? Because the box can actually be that little, okay, touch and go, touch and go.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives a nice in between. But I love that you're open to it, because I think some people will be like, oh man, if you don't do a competition, you're not a powerlifter.
Yeah,
You're not
like,
going
it depends on like life application or even sports. Like, there's a lot of like people that do like power output sports, like whether it be like shot put or discus, or maybe like they do like they're working on their vertical jumps for like different sports where they train like partial squats. And that's like like there's some people that like they're the best in the world, and you look at their training and it looks very unorthodox and maybe incorrect to the norm, but it's like when you actually see their track record, it's like, oh, they're the best in the world. Like, maybe I shouldn't tell them you need to squat ass to grass like an Olympic weightlifter or like a powerlifter, because like for them it doesn't really apply to them. I will say, like, if you are squatting high or limiting your range of motion to gain the amount of weight you can load to like boost your ego, then it might be like a separate issue, because like you overloading the weight and sacrificing range of motion, that might lead to like unrealistic expectations, and maybe even like could cause like injuries and stuff like that, because it's not really replicable. And also, like, if you're loading the bar super heavy and you're trying to like reduce your range of motion and not go as low in certain exercises, but then you accidentally do go too low, then you're like, I've seen like lots of videos too where like people might be doing partials with super heavy weight, and then they go a little bit too low, and then they're like injure themselves. Like, I've seen like a lot of things on like Smith machines too, but it just depends on like the sport, right?
Totally. The sport, the intent. Well, I mean, if we're talking about the average person, like that's where we're kind of giving a lens to the people who are like, hey, I don't want to go crazy heavy, but I want to go heavy enough. Like, that's the lens we're trying to give. But I love that you're calling it out. It's like, that's not an excuse to be super egotistical with the weight now and think, hey man, I can go so heavy. They said I didn't got to go 90 degree or all the way to parallel. You can just go 90, and then that 90 slowly comes up, or you're just starting to compensate that form. Man, I remember still seeing the partial range of motion guy at the gym where he had me spot him, and I'm like, oh, that's the whole rep you're doing. And I'm 90% certain this wasn't for sport. He was a very heavy set guy trying to be a power lifter. And the thing I will always reserve to be like, maybe step back and be like, maybe his powerlifting coach wants him to do partials heavily loaded, right? I don't know of too many coaches that want to do that. There's like, you know, the prescription of overloaded walkouts overloaded rack outs, like those things are a thing. But I don't know of too many powerlifting coaches that would get you to do the top half without a box or something that would get you to massively overload a squat that you're only getting the top quarter. So he didn't look like a jumping athlete, I'll say that. And so that's where we have to have that nice language for yourself, a person needs to appreciate. And look at the joint angle, right? If you're not getting a minimum 90 degrees in like a knee or the hip or both, then you're probably not going to benefit that much from that lift. And at the same time, I'll come back to your original statement, is just make sure you have an objective measure that's consistent, that you can continue to practice and achieve.
And that's why like squatting to a box with various heights is like super like resourceful and useful, because you're actually keeping things consistent
relative to yourself, and where you want it to be. And like even you know, I had a client recently who wanted to do 1 rep mac tests. Now I made sure he was practicing the bench pause, because the bench pause will help you practice the brace. If you don't do the pause, you won't like I learned how to brace my legs from using that pause. And so with the pause, you're learning so much. But then we went through the test, I'm like, you don't have to pause if you don't care, because you want to see yourself hit a bench. You're not planning on doing a powerlifting competition. Just make sure it's safe. I would say in that situation, get the weight out. Like, would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's your test. No one else cares other than you. You want to put it on social media, people can argue, but it's like, it's your test. You're just trying to have something, and then the next time we do it, we know that that's your standard. It's okay that you don't need that perfect pause.
That is why there's certain exercises which is like nice, because there's like no really true way to cheat it. Like for example, like a deadlift from the floor to like fully standing up, like you can't really cheat that.
Sumo.
That
debate.
But like for example, like with squat, like, you know, like maybe he didn't go as far down as his other person, and like what's more impressive at like bench press, same kind of idea. But like with nice thing about like a deadlift is like you picking it up from the ground and standing up fully. Like it's kind of nice because there's like less gray area. It's like you either did it or you didn't. It's not like, you know, like, oh, he kind of did it a little bit or less.
Deadlift's more honest with that. And I know we talked about it a little bit. Do you feel, because you've mentioned this, and I want to bring it up again because it's just a fun conversation, because me and Quinn go back and forth on it all the time. Because you mentioned how, like, when you look at the tops, like, it's kind of split. It's not like sumo is dominantly cheating. It's just easier for certain people, and it's harder for certain people. Now, I give credit to those who have to conventional, because you just do have to do a longer range of motion. Now, you could have the same argument with bench press, but again, you could argue that bench press could be standardized. It's not, but it could be, right? Because the tiny range of motion, big arch. There are problems with the sport. But I was saying to Quinn is like, I agree that it's not the same, but as long as the sport sees it as the same, it's the same. I would argue that it probably does make sense to just, if you want it to be even, then no one should be allowed to sumo. It would just have to be that rule. But would you agree or disagree with that could be a rule to make it more equal, or do you not see it as being such a distinguishable advantage?
I could see that being implemented in the future.
Oh, you actually think they'll do it?
I think they might. There's lots of rule changes, like even like this year, like as of the time of this recording, it's like 2 weeks into January. There's already rule changes that like affected other lifts and stuff like that. But with deadlift in particular, I don't know. I feel like the sport as a whole is maybe trying to like view like what the community wants. Like a lot of people, like, you know, like they joke on like sumo because they believe that it's truly easier. So if they're trying to cater to the masses, you know, I could definitely see them making it a conventional only thing. But going back to your point, is there an advantage? I think for you, there's an advantage for you to pull sumo. And for me, I think there's an advantage to pull conventional. I don't think somebody would intentionally do a lift that makes them weaker
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if they're allowed to do it, they should do it. Like in all sports, there's different techniques, and some people use different techniques for different things.
Yeah.
Like with any sport, like I don't play soccer, but like I'd
Yeah.
imagine you can kick a soccer ball many different ways, and it just depends on the situation you're in. So
As long as it's called the deadlift, not the conventional deadlift,
yeah,
it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And if they ever changed it and they said that powerlifting requires you to do conventional, that would be the discussion to be had, right? I see it as such an advantage for me because once I was done competition, I went back to conventional a little bit, and I could still do around 500, but very quickly I got peaked. Like I could just keep slowly climbing with sumo, and it was like, whoa, that was way too much. My back is way more vulnerable on it. Whereas sumo is like, I rarely actually felt too much of back pressure. I could get way more quads, and just my understanding is the hip anatomy is different, right? Some people have very kind of more narrow hips and they can leverage up and down well, and people who have wider hips tend to leverage more off the side and push up. And so it's just like, I just don't have nearly as much injury risk. So it's silly for me not to do that form of it.
Yeah, and to promote and tell people you can't lift a certain way, I think that would remove a lot of people from competing in the sport, because then
True.
like they're just going to get injured and their body can't handle it. Like I would arguably say like conventional, it demands more on like your back than like a sumo. So
And that's a great sentiment.
so for longevity of a sport, like like sumo is better for that.
Yeah,
And, like,
it's a really good point.
for your so
You have, I don't know, you probably see like it's it's not quite 50-50, but there's quite a few people. It's like sumo versus conventional. What would you say the percentage is broadly?
I would honestly say it's probably 50-50. It depends on what federation you're into, because like if the bar is allowed to be like more whippy, you're gonna see a little bit more like sumo probably.
Yeah.
But if it's more of a stiff bar, you might see a little bit more conventional. The lighter weight classes, you're gonna see more sumo. Heavier weight classes, you're gonna see more conventional. But I would say as a whole, it probably balances out.
That's yeah, and so right there you might have, of those 50%, okay, I'm actually not going to, and it's like it'd be 25%. There's like, well, it's just, and I would see it as a bigger injury risk for me. I absolutely would, because I have not had any, like, certainly back gets a little sore, but not the same exposure as when I have to do conventional. It was actually funny because I was just doing some slow ramp ups, and the week prior I did okay, and then it was like 420 or 425 or 525 or something like that, and I went for one extra rep, and I felt something in the back I hadn't felt in a long time. The only time I feel it is in conventional, so it would probably make me hesitate a little bit more, and I don't have as much of a hesitation with sumo. So it's a really good point. Here's a really good one, because I like to kind of broadly talk about both powerlifting and like the Gen Pop. Made a post about this recently, and some people got heated. When should you use a weight belt? Because I had this kind of call out. It was like, don't be a weightlifting belt, bro. Don't fucking use it for everything. Like,
Yeah.
when do you think people need it? Because I think this is actually a valuable thing. Because when some people are even just starting out, you're still learning how to brace. Maybe don't rely on it right off the bat, but eventually you'd be like, bracing will help you.
Yeah, I would say honestly, I wouldn't say it depends. I would say like they both have their advantages. Whether you decide to like withhold using a belt for as long as possible, or you decide to use a belt earlier on, they both have their advantages. Likewise, they both have their disadvantages. So I'll talk about like the pros and cons about that. But if you feel like you using a belt is good for you, use a belt. If you feel like the pros outweighs the cons for not wearing a belt, don't wear a belt. At the end of the day, it's individualized. The pros for not wearing a belt, I feel like you can kind of learn about your positioning better. You can understand and feel the tiny nuances of like, this is good, this is bad, where like a belt might hide some of those like smaller things because it kind of masks it a little bit. You know, not wearing a belt, you can argue that it develops your core stronger. But at the same point, you can argue that using a belt develops your core more, because you're actually able to forcibly apply pressure with your midsection more with the belt on, with your intro abdominal bracing. Using a belt's gonna prevent injury, I think, a little bit better than not using a belt. So it just depends on the person. And also, I feel like for the most part, 95% of people will agree that using a belt, you'll have the potential to lift a little bit heavier maybe on deadlifts and squats with a belt. Um, so if somebody goes throughout their entire training without a belt and then they decide to like lift as heavy as possible without a belt, that's on them. But I feel like at the end of the day, like using a belt for your top lifts that will benefit you and maybe reduce injury risk. So at the end of the day, I would say like it depends on the person. I know people that lift more without a belt, and that's like super uncommon, but
That's cool.
there is people like that. So it just depends on the person. I don't think there is like a wrong answer.
I loved your phrasing. I think about it all the time in the winter. Is like when it comes to belts and straps and all those things, you know what it's like to clean off your windshield without gloves on?
Yes.
It's way better when you have gloves on, right?
Yeah.
You could do it, but it's just better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, every time I clean off my windshield and I don't have gloves, or I have gloves, I'm like, it's better. And I think about that. And honestly, I'm the person who wanted to go as far as I could without the belt, because to me it was like maybe an extra 5-10%, but I need this skill of bracing first. And I also feel like people's core needs to get stronger, their legs need to get stronger, because we're not even, until you're in what I kind of consider super physiological loads. And I call them super physiological because unless we had the sport of powerlifting, people wouldn't lift that, right? Unless you had the practice skill of what powerlifting is, like me doing 600 pounds wouldn't happen in nature. That would not happen by accident, right?
Yeah.
And so once you
couple rocks shaped like a barbell.
that's not going to happen, right? I'm not going to end up, unless I'm literally moving rocks all the time. When people are doing, I think, somewhere near twice their body weight in deadlifts, twice their body weight in back squat, 1.5, and I'm just ballparking these percentages. When, okay, we are now in, only when you do the sport do you get those lifts. Then I think these tools come to play, because we're talking about something that's not normal, right? I think and if someone wants to use it earlier in those lifts, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm not against it. Just make sure you know that the bracing's a skill, not the belt. And and I'll even say, because I learned it, and when I had that little dressing on top, it definitely made a difference. Like, you remember my lift, like when I actually, the bench is where I noticed the most, and the squat. I didn't even notice that much on my deadlift, but it was like, hey, just that little extra thing made a difference. My back not to cramp.
And also too, I think like unless you kind of like adventure into lifting as much weight as humanly possible, a lot of people don't even really understand how to use a belt.
Mm-hmm.
So like you just putting a belt on and cranking it, that doesn't really do anything for you. Like that just might just add compression around your midsection. That just kind of like alleviates some discomfort. But like the belt isn't going to protect your back. It's gonna enhance the protection that you're already giving yourself by engaging your abdominal and midsection.
Gives you a wall to push off of.
Yeah,
but you
just amplifies that push
if you know how to do that push.
Yeah.
And so what people will make a mistake of is, like you said, how to do it properly. Well, if you're tightening it excessively and you're cinching yourself like you think it's a fucking corset, well, we're actually not giving ourselves the air bubble, right? There's the right in between. And you even commented, hey, you want a little tighter on the squat. You want a little looser on the deadlift. You want just the right amount on the bench if you need it on the bench. And those are skills that you need. The funny part of the comment that was on social media was like, and I get where they're coming from, because they were fighting back because they had back issues. So they use it mentally. And so I'm like, okay, if you need it mentally and you're exercising, I'm not trying to come after you. But I'm a little bit critical of the person, and honestly trying to give them a little bit of openness to realize, if you wear it, it's not all workout, the entire workout, it actually has way less of a chance of helping you. Because I've even seen research that when people try to use even kind of like the worker belts, like workers would use kind of almost like just tensors really more than anything, it saw a decrease in abdominal strength, because they're not routinely trying to contract their core, and they rely too much on those worker belts. And so I'm actually critical of overuse of these things, whereas I think it's a great tool when you know when to pull it out.
Yeah, I feel too like you bracing and activating your core without a belt is going to be like far more superior than you using a belt and not knowing how to use it. Like, you have to actively engage your core. And I would like say, even from a personal level and even like coaching, I don't want people using like a belt on like accessory movements, like,
Right. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Like,
That's what I don't like it on. You're doing a lat pull down. What are you bracing for? You're doing a curl. It's like, maybe those curls can't be that heavy, right? Like, it's meant for the heavy brace.
Yeah, I would say it's really only meant like let's be specific here. I would say for like a hinge movement, whether it be like a squat or deadlift or a variation of those, or like maybe even like a carry if you're doing some kind of strongman event where you actually need to like have a little bit more stable core. But outside of that, if you're just doing like like bending your elbows, bending your knees, like moving your shoulder joint, like typical bodybuilding movements, you probably don't.
The only exception I would say is like the isometric hold you want from the bench, because I did actually find that was fine. But we're still talking about,
and it's like, and that's kind of like a sneaky thing.
Depends on the person and whether or not you need it. And so, and I didn't even realize I needed it until like right before competition. It was like, hey, this actually made a difference for me. So I think that's hopefully solid advice for people. Here's a good one. Can anyone bench 225? Now, this is a fun one. We're going to start with bench press, but I'm also making this like a philosophical conversation or a theoretical conversation, that what people don't appreciate about powerlifting is that it is such an amazing skill that people can acquire over time, that almost no matter how weak you currently are, depends, but in the average age of anywhere from 18 to 65, what you can do with powerlifting over a long period of time is fucking incredible per pound. Like, you can be body weight relative crazy strong. So let's start with can anyone bench 225?
Are we saying like male and female?
Yeah.
I would say I'll just change the number slightly.
Totally fine.
I'll just say like for guys 225 and like girls, let's say like 155, because I feel like that's kind of a comparable number.
That's
metric.
Good.
I would say, unless you have like a disability, let's say like you're missing an arm, right? Things like that. If you're healthy and able, I would definitely say yes. Like, any guy can bench 225 and any girl can bench 155, but it depends on your goals. For some people, achieving that metric, they might not be able to run a marathon in under 4 hours. I feel like it's a give and take thing. So depending on what your focus is in life, if you start bench pressing at the age of 16, and even if you don't hit it when you're 30, you're probably going to hit it when you're 40. But like, if you, I would say like 100% absolutely 225 is achievable for most men, and like 155 for girls as well. Like, if we go higher than that, like then
it gets in a niche and body weight relative.
Like the taller athlete will be able to lift more. If someone's like naturally only like 5'2", and they're smaller framed, like, then benching 315 like might not happen. I know there is this thing I heard online too. It's like talking about that same question, but with 315, like, can every guy hit 315? And then the guy comes, he's like, oh, like, if you're not like, over 180 pounds, you'll never bench press more than 315. But I know I've coached lots of athletes that are under 180 that are benching well more than 315. So I just think, sport specific, if you put your mind to it and you have a dedicated plan and you work towards it and you want to hit that goal, that's definitely achievable. It's not out of the reach.
And what you had mentioned is like how long is, and that's what people don't appreciate about this kind of skill development. That's really fun about powerlifting. And I use the term fun. You said it wasn't, like, you were surprised that when I was talking before. It's like, I found it fun that it's simple. Go do your work. It's like, when it comes to actual heavy lifts, that's some of the easiest part of your lift, because you're intentionally trying to make it hard, but only hard enough that you're not overtaxing yourself where it's scary, that you really are going to hurt yourself. You're very great at the load prescriptions. And then when you tell me after, you're like, go do a 9 out of 10 on the Bulgarian split squats. And it's like, well, that's fucking miserable, but it's only like 2 or 3 sets, right? And so, yeah, it's tough, but the repetition can just go so far. And that's what I think is beautiful about powerlifting, is repetition of the same shit again and again and again. And you'd mentioned, I like that you kind of had that lens for people, because I think it's helpful. It doesn't have to be this year, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you put those little tiny inch by inch by inch, and maybe when not just you went from a decade to another, you could reach it when you're 40. And so, like, that's why I haven't even let go of, like, I'm skeptical of 400 on my bench, but I'm not afraid of it. Meaning, like, if you keep on it, like, incredible things can happen.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. There was a client that reached out to me, I think, let's say 13 months ago. His goal from January of 2025 to like December 31st, December, or like, yeah, like of 2025, so like a year. His goal was in a year's time frame. Like, he had a New Year's resolution. It's like, I want to get into lifting weights and I want to hit the goal of joining the 1,000 pound club. And this is a guy with like next to no lifting experience. So like, I was kind of thinking, like, this guy's 33. He weighs 155 pounds. He's big into like judo, jujitsu, things of that nature. Like, he's kind of had like a healthier lifestyle, but like, he's never really dedicated time into like lifting weights for the purpose of getting stronger. Within a year from like next to no barbell training, he benched 275, and he weighs like 155, and he's 33. So that, even right there, for the 225 question, like, this is with like a coach and an athlete, and he was only training 2 days a week.
Wow.
2 days a week of dedicated barbell training, and then he was doing like 1 or 2 days of like jujitsu. I think he did a blend of like jujitsu and like judo, and then like a couple days of strength training. And what he noticed, that was like a goal of his, to hit the 1,000 pound club, but also like to like bench more than 2 plates. That was another goal. But like, cool thing with him, like, that was the initial purpose and the goal, and we achieved that. But like, what was cool to him was like how much it helped with like his life, and how much stronger and better of an athlete he was with like judo and jujitsu. Like, without him like getting technically better, I'm sure he was getting technically better in the sport, but like, people he was like rolling with were like, wow, like, you're so much stronger all of a sudden, which is like general training. So that's cool.
Well, and that's what people don't appreciate when you see it a lot on social media. General strength, like, that's where the powerlifts come in, help specific sport specific skills, because they're general.
Yeah.
Like, we're not trying to get you to put like an awkward load on you to practice jujitsu. We're not trying to make that. But anytime you do a push exercise, anytime you push something away from you, anytime you pull something, anytime you're hip extending, because that movement of a squat, hinge, and push are so simplistic, it associates with everything. But the more specific you make your exercise, the less chance it's going to transfer over into other skills. And that's why you still see the squat, bench, and dead in most athletic prescriptions, because good strength coaches know that we don't want to try to interfere too much. We want to make this, you are a fundamentally strong person, fundamentally strong. If it's a boxer, it's a jiu-jitsu person, the specific part of the training is injury prevention. Or maybe there's a certain plane that you work on more. So like, you know, when you're powerlifting, we're not doing any rotation, right? We're not doing any horizontal movements. And coming out of powerlifting, I was like, oh man, I got to get my more rotation because of goaltending. Like, it was a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
And boxers need rotation, so we still got to train that. But you're not doing a ton of it. You just need to do some more of it, and then injury prevention, so that you can just do your sport more, because your sport makes you better at your sport. But if you're a stronger person, then it just applies, right? Like, it will apply in the safest way possible.
To tell someone, hey, you're gonna like stay a similar body weight, you know, you're gonna gain like a little bit more musculature, lose a little bit of body fat, and just like, everything's gonna be stronger. And your like tendons and ligaments are gonna be stronger, like your bone density is gonna be improved, your overall strength, without changing too much about yourself. Like, it's very beneficial, and there's not much hindrance to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes into something I'd love for your description of this, because you mentioned the same body weight, and that's the cool thing about the power lifts. How would you describe this when someone's talking to you? It's like, hey, what's the difference between muscle building and strength training? Like, how do you see those two different when you're trying to, because I've tried to describe it for people, how strength can affect muscle building, and muscle building can affect strength, but you can train those differently. How would you describe that to someone, how the training for that is inherently a little bit different?
I would say, like, Like, to be perfectly honest, if you gain strength, you're going to gain musculature. And if you gain musculature, you're also going to gain strength. Like, they're both byproducts of each other. I would say the difference is when you're bodybuilding, you're focusing on muscle groups. You know, you're working on like your biceps, your triceps, like your rhomboids, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves. You're working on muscle groups. With strength training, you're improving and developing muscle patterns. So I would say, like, if a bodybuilder is like focusing on the physique, like their chest muscles, a power lifter or someone focusing on strength, they're focusing on being more efficient and strong and be able to apply more force in movement patterns. So I think like the nice thing about strength training is that like they are actively learning and their body is learning as well how to apply more force and be more productive in movement patterns versus like, you know, growing as a whole, like with muscles if you're like bodybuilding per se. So I think that's like the main difference. Like if you train for strength, you're teaching your body how to be more efficient in those movements, which is nice. If you're strictly doing bicep curls and triceps with you know, single joint extensions, that might not apply to like a physical like thing, like say a football, like an offensive lineman on the football, like actively trying to push and hold people because it's different. But when you're training like the movements, you're like a bench press, you're actively like working those that movement,
Synergistic of the whole thing. Yeah.
everything in line. It's more compound movements, your body and muscle groups and joints moving and like, yeah, like synergy versus like just isolation movements.
Totally.
Don't really train the entire system as good as it could. So I think that's like the main difference.
I like that. It's a really good way to put it. It's the efficiency of it, because it's what people like, and that's why I was, you know, even it goes back to the 225 bench thing. It's like, you just got to understand that your body needs to get efficient at that movement and you're capable of it. Like you're just not efficient enough right now. And when guys try to overload, and that's something else we're going to talk about, is like mistakes people are making with loading, is like, you're not efficient enough to handle a heavy load yet. So we do the appropriate load, right? So the way that you mentioned that with bodybuilding is like, you know, we're going to do some cable flies and that might help your bench press. We're not saying it wouldn't, but you know, a bodybuilder could honestly, especially if he doesn't like bench press, he could do nothing but just flies here, flies there, extension here. They love stability. They love simple machine work, right? But whereas we want to work more the pressing movement. And so that's why I've always been more of a power builder myself, where I want to use the full range. I want to use the movement pattern to build the muscle. It actually doesn't make it the best for bodybuilding, but it can make you strong and still build.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I would be interested if you would highlight is, like you talk about the efficiency. Do you think that the intensities, you know, RPE, taken to failure, is that all the same in your lens when it comes to strength versus muscle building?
I would personally say no. I would say the reason why it's not the same is because in powerlifting setting, if your intensity is like a 10 out of 10 every time, you might be like fighting through repetitions just to achieve that repetition. And if you're fighting and barely surviving that set or that rep, you're not going to be developing the skill as much.
Right.
And for example, this is why like with any sport, like practices, like even with like fighting, like with you would know, like sparring, like it's good to slow things down and work on your technique because that makes you more efficient, right? And like the nice thing about powerlifting is like you need to develop the skill, and then there's a time and the place to put the intensity on. You know, like that's like closer towards a competition, like everything's getting ramped up, the RPEs, the intensity, the weights. But there's a time and place for everything for strength training. With bodybuilding, in my opinion, you kind of want to take more of those sets to like close to failure and actually bring the intensity, not be lazy with your workouts. You really want to like achieve that mind muscle connection and really kind of like beat your body up to promote growth. If you beat your body up to promote strength, you're going to find yourself injured, achy, painy, and developing bad movement patterns. Because sometimes too, like if you're deadlifting as most weight as possible, like in order for your body to develop or to lift as much weight as humanly possible, like you might develop bad habits if you reduce the weight and you can focus on better technique, it'll apply better in the long run, and the longevity of the movement and the strength. So I would say, to answer your question again, is the intensity the same for like a bodybuilding style versus like a strength training style? I would say it's different.
Yeah. No, I think that
And there's a time and place for everything.
Totally. And you nailed the perception there that I think it's valuable for people to appreciate. And that's why you can have the power building approach. But if you want to get stronger at a lift, first and foremost, make sure you're efficient at it. And as you mentioned, if you were trying to, fight someone, or let's say it's not something so intense, like let's say it's golf. Let's say it's something where you got to swing at it with accuracy. And I always use that example for powerlifting is a driver, because the driver is where every guy has an ego and be like, I want to fucking smash this drive.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it goes to the left or right, or you fucking miss the ball.
Yeah, and you hitting it as hard as possible, it might not go as far as if you're just focusing on being smooth and fast.
Smooth, and it goes effortlessly as far as one.
Yeah.
And you watch the guys who put it as far as they can, pound for pound, they are smaller than the people who are trying to drive as hard as they can. So that's where it's super important when you're looking at the powerlifts, especially. Try to be efficient with the movement. You still need intensity, but it's just the right intensity. It's not the max intensity. And the most important thing is, I always call it like reps that are heavy with speed versus reps that don't have speed because you're pushing so hard to failure.
Yeah.
And muscle building reps have basically they run out of speed, but you're okay with that. When you run out of speed and you're doing a strength movement, that's why we say that's not good for strength as much, right? Because you're no longer creating true power output, which is force times velocity. And so if you lost velocity, and then you mentioned you get into compensation, you might start, doing a little bit too much here or there, well, then it's not going to be as beneficial. So I always give people like a nice little in between is try to have as many, like when you're trying to get strong in something, let's say you're doing the power building form, you make sure that you're ramping up in some lifts, like a deadlift, so it just shouldn't be used for muscle building as much, right? We should be using that for bringing the force, do your accessory where you're doing more bodybuilding style. Back squat, arguably you could, but I think there's still high risk when you go heavyweight. I would at least do a drop set if you're going to do higher reps at a near failure, right? Yeah. And bench press, I actually like a nice in between where I'm going to do my bring up, ramp up sets, but with reps in reserve, need to have speed of the bar. Then I do a drop set, and then that's where I can be even touch and go. I'm not worried about pausing. I'll use those for more of the muscle building effect. But hit your strength first, and then use the last set to like kind of extend that exhaustion. That's where I love to do rest pause sets or just drop sets, because then it's a bit safer, right, too. But I think that's really helpful, because like it was just super funny when I was, again, more Instagram comments that people get after me for, but I'm like, look, I'm trying to come from powerlifters' perspectives here. Like there's a reason why they're not going 10 out of 10 RPE all the time.
Yeah, it's such it confuses a lot of people. If you see a really, really strong person at the gym and you watch them work out sometimes, like let's say with bigger movements like squat, bench, deadlift, if you look at them and you'll see them lift and you'll be like, wow, that looked really easy, but that was a lot of weight on the bar. Like, why didn't they add like 3 more repetitions? And then if you talk to them and ask them, they're like, oh, like this is just what I'm doing today. They're like, oh, like you're only benching 405 pounds for like 3 reps. Like you could have easily done it for like 5 or 6. It's like, yeah, well, that's not what I'm doing. but then if you were to see that same athlete, like maybe do like tricep extensions, then they're going to failure on like those like rope extensions, like to really get that burn and fatigue.
Yeah.
But it's weird, like it's such a deceiving thing, like seeing such strong people and you watch them train. How they got there was just like incremental increases over the years, and they've gotten to that point like safely without getting injured. Right. So
it's the years. Yeah. But yeah, I love the phrase, how long is. Now we can kind of dance into this because it applies to help people who are trying to do appropriate weight prescriptions. Now I try to always encourage people to look at something simplistic like a mild version of Jim Wedler's 5-3-1. We talked about it a little bit before, but what would be like a way for people to think about planning their, like, let's talk about the heavy lifts, their heavy lifts, because this is where people really get it wrong, where they're trying to like, I'll always remember the day the guy literally asked me for a spot, and it like hurt his ego so much. I think it was like 225 he was trying to do. And he's like, so he's like, can you spot me? He doesn't get it. And he's like, oh, I'm going to try it again a little bit here. I'm like, but you're not going to get it. Like, you just proved to yourself your body doesn't know how to do it. And he's like, why don't you, and I hate giving unsolicited advice because it's hurt the guy's ego, but I'm like, why don't you try to do a little less and do it better, work on technique more, and you're going to actually make that 225 easy one day. It's like, what do you mean by technique? It's just like, what do I do better? I'm like, well, bring in your elbows more, drive off your legs more, and you'll have more speed to the bar. And then I think he dropped it to like 220 or 215, and he did it better, and he did a full clean rep. He wasn't happy with it, and that's why, again, I don't want to give unsolicited advice, but I made the same mistake thinking that more is more and you're just indestructible. But long rant to say, what would be a simple idea for people to think about when it comes to gradual progressions in some of the heavy barbell lifts?
Like, I know what you're going with this, but also to say another point is, I will tell people it's, don't chase numbers. Don't load X amount of weight on the bar and just try to hit it. Like, let it happen naturally. It's almost like a relationship. Like, some of the best relationships, like, just kind of come to you. You're not actually actively like, hey, I want a girlfriend or a boyfriend. I want to go like find one on the street right now. Like, that might not be the best relationship, but if you let it happen naturally, it's a better situation. So same thing with the weights. No matter what you do, if you lift, you will get stronger. Like, it's inevitable. And understanding that you're going to get stronger no matter what, if you just show up to the gym, you're going to get stronger, and just let it happen naturally. Like, oh, like, what do you bicep curl? Like, I don't know, like 50s. It's like, that wasn't a specific thing. You just slowly did bicep curls, and over time they just were able to add more weight, and it just got to a point that this is what you do now. The same thing will happen with your bench press, like hitting those goals of like 135, 225, 315. That's what I'm saying with that. So what I'm saying is, if you're close to 225, sometimes that's the worst thing, because then you're
too close. You're trying to go after.
You're too close, and you're just letting it. You're putting it on the bar and you're failing it. You're putting it on the bar and you're failing it. What I would say is, so that's the biggest thing, is like, don't chase it. Just let it happen naturally. Don't force it. And then if you're actually talking about like ways to like get stronger and stuff, I would say like 5 sets of 5 is a nice starting point. Around like 70%, 75% is a good spot. 5 by 5
of your 1 rep max.
Yeah. 5 by 5 at 80%, that's going to be like pretty difficult, but you can do it if your technique and everything else is sound. But like, it's okay. You don't need to do a 5 by 5 at 80%. You can do a 5 by 5 at 70%, and take your ego out of it. Know that you can do an extra 3-4 reps every set, and just let it be a 5 by 5 at 70%. And if you want to like push your accessories more, just push your accessories more. And then, you know, like, if the 5 by 5 at 70% was easy, you know, like a week later, just add 5 pounds, do that. Let it be easy. You don't need to chase difficultness with like strength training. As long as you're progressing, you're moving in the right direction. I think I maybe mentioned this to you too. It's like, PRs don't necessarily need to be difficult. They can be easy. You can hit a PR and be like, oh, that was easy. And then like 3 weeks later, you like attempt a little bit heavier, like, oh, that was easy. You don't need to like, let's say like you hit a 405-pound deadlift. You don't need to like, and it was like, okay, you don't need to hit that 100% out of 100% that day. Next week, and you go to 415. Next week, you go to 425. Like, sometimes like progress is like that. We're adding 5 pounds every couple of weeks, and it's easy every time. You don't need to chase. You don't need to like do 100% of 100% every workout. Like, you can just do 95% of your 1 rep max for one, and then do that weekly, and then you're getting stronger. Like, so
totally. The couple really good phrases that you had that I think fit in here. One is, you had said to me when I had said, you know, you shouldn't do too many 1 rep maxes in a year, and you're like, you shouldn't do too many in your life. Oh, yeah. And that really weighed on me. I'm like, you're right, because like, that is just such a physiological challenge you're not going to know it perfectly. And the other one was like, just the idea, as you mentioned, the way you phrased that was so good, make it come easy. And if we're not chasing this one number, right? And if you can actually blow through, like, I actually tell guys this, it's like, what if your 1 rep max goal turns into your 3 rep max easily? Like, I would rather you continue to nail 3 rep maxes and you blow by that number because you never even needed to try it as a 1 rep max.
Yeah, like having a 3, yeah, that's actually, I would say, like, overall for your strength, if your goal is 3 rep maxes or 5 rep maxes, you're going to get much stronger than like a 1.
Because you're probably doing, because the thing that people don't realize, we go back to that speed component, and this is in the research, this is where people get stronger, is not in their upper 90% very much, not 95%. You don't get stronger when you're barely moving the bar. That's only for competition.
That's just to show your top end.
That's to show your top end, and it's not actually contributing to your strength that way.
And I'll say this to you, when you're testing your strength, you're not building your strength.
Yeah, totally. You build it from the appropriate intensity. And so, as you mentioned about the 3 to 5 rep max range, you still have speed to that. And when you have speed to it with the force, that's where it's producing the best efficiency, along with you probably can handle that load with a better skill. Like at my competition, you got me up to 495. And I did not, like, I could not believe how fast that moved. And probably could have done over
Your
5.
squat?
Yeah, my squat was and we didn't even come close to that during our prep. I think my heaviest was
maybe like 440.
Yeah, maybe 440.
Like a double or triple kind of thing.
And it was like, which means I could have blown by it even more. We don't even know my true 1 rep, which is a great place to be in. I think if you mentioned you're not chasing the numbers, you just focus on those 3, and I'd say chase the process, right? Like, as boring as that sounds, but if you play that long game, you can't be stopped, really, right? And as we mentioned, the 225 question is a really valuable thing for recognizing that doesn't have to be your limit. Like, that's the really cool part, is if you don't try to set a time limit on yourself, you can just do incredible things, right? Even if you get late in the game, let's say the person is 30 or 40 when they start, and you started now. Well, fuck, man, you actually do got a lot of ground that you can work with, even if you're going to get 60 in a decade or so, because you're so new at it. Strength has so much potential because you have so much to learn in that efficiency, right? It's like learning, it's picking up a new subject all of a sudden for your body. Just like if you were to start researching physics in your 40s, your mind would have a lot to learn. So when it comes to the power lifts, you got a lot to teach yourself, and to just be humble enough in that process. And I love that you phrased that. The closer you are to that goal, the more dangerous it is. Yeah. And I think people need to value that a lot.
Yeah, like sometimes it's good to have goals in life, but some like goals could be the best thing for you or the worst thing for you, because when you set a goal, sometimes you're creating the upper limit for yourself. Like for a lot of people, like some people's goals, like, hey, I want to do a pull-up. It's like, hey, like that goal is not big enough, you know, like you're gonna get there. Like let's aim bigger than that, right? Like that's just a stepping stone along the progress. Like instead of saying like, hey, I want to be able to do like a pull-up, say like, hey, like in a year from now, I want to like be proud of how much progress I've made with my fitness, that like I'm a much stronger and fitter version of myself. And like it doesn't matter what the individual accomplishments are, just knowing that I put in like my all, and now I'm like so much better. And also too, like I always even say like you as a goalie with sports, like if you're on a team and you're in this championship, you be like, hey, I want to have a shutout. Like I feel like you having a shutout and not allowing any goals, I feel like as long as you win that championship, like that's the big.
Even then, actually, it's what's more important there. You're right. So you can't say shutout. You actually shouldn't even say win or loss, because you have to be so fixated on the process. You have to be so fixated on what you can control. It's high intentions with low attachment. So I have a high intention on having 0 on that board. I have a high intention on winning this game, but I'm not attached to that result, because if anything happens that goes to veer that off the path, it could ruin my confidence and focus. The thing I can control is to be present, and like I'm still in goaltending. So it's like, I always have goals that go by that I don't want. I always want to stop. I always want to have the most shots, but I don't stay focused on that. I focus on, okay, can I be extremely present and want the next puck no matter what? Can I be positioned well? Like literally just how much focus a goalie has so much hinging on his skill. And so if a person can really be fixated, because even if I do lose a game, you know, say we lose even badly because we got our asses kicked and my save percentage isn't great. But if I looked at how those goals went in and I was present for every single one, and I thought my physical capacity was kind of pushed to its limit, And it certainly happens. I'm a short goalie. It's actually really hard to stop a lot of the pucks when guys have good shots. And so I'm like, okay, there was like 2 or 3 shots where I wasn't focused enough and they scored, but the other 6 goals, this happens in beer league, 6-10 or something like that is a normal score. And it's like, I'm proud that I was focused the whole game otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you got to take from that process. And when you're looking at like the strength building, and which you mentioned is super important for people to appreciate. I'll be happy when, oh, that's a fucking bad statement. That just shouldn't be in your mindset anyway.
I completely agree.
Because when this is actually well documented that like Olympic gold medalists have serious depression issues after, because then what? The then what question really fucks with some people. You know, you have to understand the process is the happy. This is the whole podcast premise is like, it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's a happiness within pursuit. And I always encourage people to recognize that happiness is a reflection more than anything. Like you don't even ask yourself if you're happy until someone's asked you. Like that doesn't come up in a day until you've asked yourself or someone's asked you. And so when you get, let's say the 225, you're going to feel really good, really good. And it was actually funny because there was a meme that came up literally yesterday or the day before of a friend where he's like, guy hits 225, he just acts like he's all big. But then after that, then what? Well, and I hit the 315, then what? I hit the 600 on the sumo, then what? I'm like, Ray bet 500, then what? It's like, well, I could hit the 400 on bench eventually, then what?
Yeah, and then with people too, like even in a competition practice, like as a powerlifting coach, when I have athletes competing, they'll be like, hey, what do you think I'm going to hit for my squat, bench, and deadlift today? And I say, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how your warm-ups move. We'll see how your first attempt moves. We'll see how your second attempt moves, and let's try to get your third. And like sometimes, like their squat might be a little bit less than what they thought, but now their bench press like surpassed what they thought they were capable of because they didn't have these fixated numbers on them. As long as like they put 100% effort into each individual lift that day, you know, like who cares like what the individual numbers are sometimes, like as long as like you're improving overall as an athlete and as an individual, you know, and then you put that effort in, like for example, if I were to predict like the numbers you were going to hit your last competition when I coached you, like I couldn't tell you. Yeah. The goal was just to like hit your lifts, like, you know, like let's move it good, let's move it fast, let's be competitive, let's be in our position where we can like try to win the whole competition, and we achieved that. So Close. Well, we put ourselves in a position to try to win the whole competition. And the last guy like had a
that was a good
pull, but that was exciting. That's the competition side of it.
Yeah, that was a good fucking pull a rabbit out the hat move by him.
Yeah,
because it was easy for him. That deadlift, fucking, it flew up, right?
Yeah, that was a like a 30-pound personal best for him as well.
Yeah, he put on a lot on that. To be fair, too, my squat went up like 30-40 pounds, right? Like my squat went up a lot, so it can happen
in 3 months.
Yeah, like actually no, mine was within a month or so because we had back-to-back competition.
Was it like I don't know what the time frame was. Was it like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or?
Yeah, it was under 2 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So because
I think you improved like 30 kilos and like
you didn't even want me to go over 500. You're like, you're not allowed to do that because I was like, I wanted the 500 because I did the math and I was like, oh man, but we're right at the 500. I'm like, I'm trusting Kurtis. He knows what he's doing. I don't know this shit. And we did it, and I even negotiated with myself. I'm like, because I don't do this today, it's going to keep me in the sport, so I know I got to try for the 500 one day. So I was actually like, I made that okay. But then when I talked to you after, you're literally like, you just can't make that kind of, because I think we hit like 460 or something.
I think I'm not too sure the exact.
The first competition was around 450 or 460.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, you can't make like a 50.
Well, it's not this. It's not the sense of that I can. It's just it's hard to predict that.
Totally.
And that's
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. Like that's a crazy leap for me to take on.
What happens, and we end up adding a lot of weight to your squat in a very short amount of time. But like you can't really predict that. That's what I mean. Like in the moment, what do you got? And it's kind of like. It's one of those things where it's like, I wish we had an extra attempt on squat because you definitely had a little bit more. But for you to still hit like a 35, 40-pound PR on your squat within like a couple of months, like that's very good progress. To be upset with that would be a little bit absurd.
And then like the bench was a little bit better. It made progress, but like that was actually what fatigued me for the sumo. But the thing that you mentioned there is so important for people to appreciate on powerlifting too. I think a good piece of advice is you can have bad days. and you should dial it back. And I think this is like a valuable thing to talk about, like weekly intensities, and just like ideally you have some sort of a weekly progression, right? Ideally you start, like you say, 75, maybe even in the first week it could be like 70 for a new program, right? And then you slowly ramp it up gradually, but somewhere's around week 3 to 4 or 5, depending on the person, depending on how they feel, start to pay attention to when it doesn't feel as easy as it should, and that dial down zone, and then the reset. Because, like, I mean, I see it all the time. Like when I'm working with Angelina or myself, it's like if I didn't get sleep, well, good luck trying to have a good deadlift the next day. Sleep is super important.
Probably number one.
I'd say it's number one.
Yeah.
Or other exercise. Like those are the two biggest interference that you're going to have is your sleep and other exercise. And so, like, if you haven't slept, even if it's like one night, or definitely if it's a couple nights, like I've been with her and she's just like, she had one good sleep, but the couple nights before that, it wasn't enough. And she's had all week, she hasn't done anything in like, 4 or 5 days. And then it's just not moving as well. And then it's in her head. And then it's like, okay. And then 2 days later, she gets a couple nights rest and she's doing her deadlift. This just happened last week. And she's like, it's moving fucking fast. And it's like, you just need to sleep. And so great advice. So what would you recommend people think about for weekly intensities as far as how they kind of increase it? Think about mild deloads or kind of resetting programs?
Yeah, like I would say, to kind of like not too crazy specific, I would say a good rule of thumb is hang around and be comfortable with the 70 to 85% of your 1 rep max. That's kind of like the area that's going to give you, in my opinion, the most improvement. People say online, and like some people say online, I'll say, and I'll disagree with that a little bit, is in order to get strong and lift heavy, you need to like lift heavy and like 1, 2, 3 repetitions build strength. Like I don't necessarily think that's too like true. I think that is true as you're approaching competition, you know,
and you
like,
need to get used to those.
You need to get like familiarized and like accustomed to those heavier loads. But I think like as a whole, your week to week training, when you're working towards these strength goals, hanging around that 70 to 85% range is probably your best bang for your buck. And then try to like, and even there's lots of like online programs. You'll notice too, like when you plug in your 1 hour maxes into these online programs, if you decide to follow these online programs, you'll notice that like the first 4 weeks, it's super light and easy. And then like, that is how it's supposed to be. It doesn't need to be out the gate 100%, because that's when you're testing your strength. And right now we want to build our strength. So I would say like as a general, like week to week, stick between that 70 to 85%, like rep ranges, like 4 to 8 is a good range. 3 to 5 sets kind of thing like that. Mm-hmm. And your whole workout doesn't need to be strictly those movements. I would say, like have a main lift, whether it be like a barbell lift of your choice that you want to improve on, do your 3 to 5 sets, 70 to 85%. Obviously like the higher, if you're at 85%, stick around like the 3, 4 range, but if you're at the 70% range, stick around that 6, 7, 8, and slowly progress. If you're doing this yourself, like if you kind of like, some people like to do like 3 sets of 8 and some people like to do like 6 sets of 4, find something that you like that can be like replicable and just do small incremental improvements over time. Like adding 5 pounds a week. If you do that for like 2 months, that's like 8 weeks. That's 40 pounds. If you're doing a 6 sets of 4 with like 155 pounds on bench press, 2 months from now, you're doing 6 sets of 4 with 195 pounds. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's so much improvement already. And if you just apply that to the long term, right? Like start thinking like long term. Don't think short term. Think if I add 5 pounds a month for a year, that's 60 pounds.
Right.
If you're benching 185 in a year from now you're benching 245, next year benching 305, like that's insane progress. So think of this, like think of small incremental increases and just be consistent with that over the long term. Don't try to rush everything. It doesn't, there's like lifting isn't a rush. It's not a sprint. It's definitely the marathon approach.
Yeah. The lifestyle approach. One second. I want to make sure this is recording. Sometimes I've made that mistake. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, sure.
This is a really good flip into what you mentioned. It doesn't have to be just the lifts, and this is something you brought up when we were talking about it. I'd love to break down a couple accessory recommendations because it was a really cool mention where you're like, hey, where do you get stuck on the bench? And you're like, is it at the bottom or is it near the top? And so, well, I was like, actually, it's closer to the top. It was like, okay, yeah. So if it's near the bottom, we want to bring up the chest more. If it's near the top, it's probably shoulders. So let's kind of work into that. Let's talk about each of the lifts a little bit and your recommendation for like how an accessory can help a certain lift. So let's start with the bench because we're on that topic. Someone gets stuck at the top, what do you recommend? Someone gets stuck more at the bottom, what do you recommend?
For sure. So I think for bench press, you got to think of like the muscle groups involved in the bench press, right? So primarily the muscle groups involved are going to be like your chest, your triceps, and your shoulders. In my opinion, if you're weak off of the chest, your chest is weak. So, like doing some like chest isolation movements, like would probably develop that, like whether it be like some wider grip bench press that like recruits a little bit more like chest than triceps, or if you do like some more like dumbbell presses or chest flies, like that should help that part of the lift. If you're weak kind of in the middle range, I feel like your shoulders are a little bit underdeveloped maybe. So maybe some like incline bench press or maybe some overhead press or maybe some like front raises to develop up the shoulders.
Anterior delt.
Yes, exactly. And then I feel like if you're weak at like the top end, your triceps are probably the weaker.
Extension.
Yeah, the finishing extension of your arms, like your triceps are probably weaker. So things that would help that would be like tricep focused dips, like close grip bench press. Yeah, I think honestly that's probably like a good coverage for the bench press there.
Is there any other accessories you recommend people think about for the bench that you just love to put in there? You think about having it as an accessory? I know it depends and you can put that in there, but I'm just curious some of your favorite ones.
Yeah, so for bench press, honestly, I think it's good to understand that you are training the bench press. And you're going to be using those three primary muscle groups. So I feel like with a bench press, if you had a bench press focused day, I would try to focus on like have at least one tricep exercise, have at least one shoulder exercise, have at least one chest exercise to supplement. So even if you're unsure of which one is lagging, at least you're hitting them all, right? Because there's some people too that some people, let's just say, for example, they will try to bench press as much as humanly possible, and they'll have a really wide grip and maybe like an exaggerated arch, let's just say, and their range of motion's less, and they're developing their chest a lot because of the nature of their arms position, but maybe they're not developing their triceps at all. So I feel like for those individuals, if they're not training their triceps at all and they're just focusing on like getting as much like an mechanical advantage with the exercise, like them hitting the legging muscle group is good. So
yeah, that makes sense. Like, so if you, and especially like you said, the lagging muscle group, you got to pay attention to what's lagging in there, and you kind of described that very well. Do you make sure in programs that people have an appropriate amount of pulling to make sure that the shoulders are balanced, injury prevention? Do you have that kind of?
Yeah. So in my opinion, pulling is probably the most underrated thing. I think no matter what you do, pulling is gonna benefit everything. It's going to give you a bigger base. It's going to help you with your posture. It's going to like have more of stabilization with all of your lifts. It's going to prevent like form breakdown with like your squat, your deadlift, your bench press. I think pulling in general, if you're unsure what to do, if you do like seated rows, lat pull down, Penley rows, bent over rows, one arm rows, that's only going to benefit everything. I feel like you can never do enough pulling. That's probably one of the best things you can do as a general thing. Like barbell lifts is like the general strength for like sports. I feel like pulling exercises is like the general strength to like all your
General strength.
Yeah, exactly. If that makes sense.
It backs everything up. Your back backs everything.
Like you having, overdeveloped triceps, isn't going to help you with as much as like having like an overdeveloped like posterior chain, right? Like a big meaty back and like good strong glutes will help you with everything.
Yeah, that's well stated. Let's talk about the back squat, what would people pay attention to if they have certain areas?
Yeah, so I feel like with the back squat also needs to apply to like if they're high bar or low bar, right? So I feel like, different variations of the lifts, like if you're a high bar lifter, you're going to be a lot more like quad and glute dominant, more upright position. If you're going to be a low bar, you're going to be more like posterior dominant. I would say overall, if you got to see if you're losing strength in the lift based off of like like you're losing position in your upper back, you're rounding forward, developing your upper back is huge. So a lot of like upper back pulling will help your squat a lot. If your form breakdown doesn't occur at all and you're simply like you're rigid, you're strong, there's no form breakdown at all, I just honestly think like isolation quad work will just overall help your squat quite a bit. So
Just like good old leg extension.
yeah, like good old like leg extensions, Bulgarian split squats, lunges, all the stuff you don't want to do for your legs. That's only going to help your squat.
You gave me great motivation on the Bulgarians, because I was just like, you didn't prescribe them for so long, and then you're like 9 out of 10 Bulgarian split squats tomorrow, and I'm just like, dude, you didn't even like ease me into like a 6 or a 7 week, and you're like, do you want to hit your PR on the squat? You're gonna be thinking of these. I'm like, okay, that was motivation.
Yeah. So I would say for squat, it's usually, is your form breaking down? Like, are you losing position? If you are losing position, you either need to adjust your position with your bar placement, hand placement, how you squat, or you need to develop your back. And then if you don't have form breakdown, like just overdevelop your quads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any other, it makes sense because it's a quad dominant movement, but is there any other signs of maybe poor glute development, hamstring development? Is there any time that you're like, oh man, this guy needs more RDLs or anything like that?
Honestly, for squat, it's one of those things too. It's like it's good to develop like everything as a whole. Like
It's probably the most total body. People say deadlift is.
Yeah.
I think squat is.
I think squat is as well. Yeah.
And the other thing I just want to point out is an accessory that like would be overlooked in this is like just your core. Like I think like if there's something that really, we talked about bracing and like the belt, like, well, be able to use that belt, because like nothing to me, deadlift, yeah, but bench, yeah, but like nothing puts your spine more at risk than a back squat. And your ability, I always tell people, and people really feel it, I say, when you are at the bottom of a squat, you imagine you're pushing your stomach into your spine, because then you're going to push off your legs. And if people don't, that's when they're actually going to be arching their back. They're putting too much stress on their back. I see the abdominals as being a huge weak link in the chain in order to even get your glutes or your quads.
And I guess from my perspective too, like a lot of the people I work with, they've been powerlifting or at least in that scene for years. So I feel like for them compared to the general person, they have that abdominal strength.
Yeah.
So I don't really see it too much, but you are right. Like I feel like that is a weak area. If people are unracking the squat and they're shaky and they can barely like hold the weight and they're uncomfortable, like developing that core is huge. So actually you are right. So this is like a funky thing too. Like this is like a sneaky thing too to actually develop your stability is you adding this is super unique, and like you'll look like hilarious at the gym doing this, but like adding like resistance bands on the side of the bar, then hanging like a couple plates, almost like a bamboo effect.
Oh yes, yeah.
So like the bar is kind of shaking.
Perturbation bars, yeah.
Yeah, so that is huge for developing your core, right?
Yeah.
Because that's actually, it's tied in with the movement where you're developing your core in the actual squat setting,
yeah.
Right? And then the other thing too, it's hilarious, but just like weighted planks. Weighted planks are amazing.
Massively. I'd say weighted planks, if you get someone to be able to put it on you, to literally take the brace and the isometric, again, that's similar to the movement because it is an isometric that you're trying to do. The other one that I'll actually, the easiest one that I think people can set up, because weighted planks can be difficult to set up because you can't do it yourself. A barbell rollout, I think, is probably the top 5 best core exercises, I would say, for a power lifter, because it is an isometric.
I feel like I could never do that in my life. I feel like my arms are way too long. The leverage is...
Fair enough. But like, you could do it and you're just partial range of motion based on it.
Yeah.
But like, that is the stress on the abdominal wall, and you're taking that it's so easy to set up. and you progressively overload that, you're gonna have a strong core. And sometimes like we do overthink what it needs to be. The one thing I actually really love too, and this is for both the core and I don't think it has to be powerlifting specific, but that gets mostly massively underrated is unstable planks. And so like as simple as a fucking plank pointer, you go in a plank and you're really, really trying to brace and you point out one arm, but your hips don't shift. Like that's an injury prevention tool. That's not just actually to help the squat. That's to prevent any instability in your hip, because now that hip has to narrow in and be tight and stable and to not fall into compensation, helps the shoulders and everything. My boxers do it all the time. Do a feet elevated single arm raise and stuff like that. It's so hard on the plank or on the core. So I would definitely say that people should think about those, even if it's not necessarily like we say the exact same. You mentioned for sure that powerlifters know how to brace well enough. So and you're actually, just to pull that out a little bit more, when you see one of your powerlifting athletes lack something in squat, let's say they don't make something, do you see that as they don't have the strength in their quads? Maybe you see it in their glutes because you know the person. How do you, because you could break that down on the bench, but it's harder to break down in the squat as much. Is that kind of what you're getting to?
Yeah, like typically like form analysis after a failed lift kind of determines a thing. Like sometimes at the end of the day, like sometimes it was just, there's three things I would say, assuming they're in the best like physical setup, like hand position, foot stance, barbell position. There's three reasons why they fail a lift. I would say this is like the most common. How do we know if it's most common? I guess it depends on the experience of the lifter, but there's three reasons why you fail a lift in the squat, I would say. You lose position, typically in your back. If you're like too forward now, you have nothing to like push off of. You're just gonna like get out of position. You have nothing. So getting out of position is one of the reasons why you fail a squat. Number two is maybe the weight's just too heavy, right? Number three, this is like very underrated for why people fail a lift. They change how they squat. How they squat in their warm-ups, as the weight's progressing, they're confident, oh, this is only like 135 pounds, this is light, easy, down, up, right? The squat doesn't change. Just because the weight on the bar is different, it doesn't change. Like you need to go down and up. Like sometimes they'll go slower on the way down. They won't dip at the bottom. Like they won't they just try to reinvent the wheel when the most amount of weight's on their back ever. They try to change something, and of course it didn't work. So I feel like having the confidence to like keep things the same is very important. So like those are like the three things. So like why do they fail? Like it's more like sometimes like it's definitely because they've changed how they squat. I'm like, why did you switch things up? They're like, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, let's just do what we normally do, and then they
get in your head kind of thing. Yeah, that's good advice. Deadlift.
So for deadlift, I would obviously say it depends on your stance again, like sumo or conventional, but it is very similar. So I would say if you are weak off the floor, quads, if you're kind of weak towards like the top end, I would definitely say like your legging group would be like your glutes. And then again too, like midway through the lift, if you're losing position and you it's usually upper back and then your lower back, right? If you're losing position, then like you have like your upper back's weak. So I would say it's a combination of your quads, glutes, or upper back.
Or again, load management.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just too heavy.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it comes to deadlift conventional, I would just say like for myself, it's taken me like I'll honestly say all my deadlift strength still comes from my back. Like that's why I do the sumo, because I can get my quads into it.
Yeah.
And so if I do a deadlift, it's like I don't have enough of that technique to get that quad drive. I've been doing rack pull recently where I'm starting to tie into it. I'm really feeling the push off the ground and getting the extension. So it's like, to me, I have form technique that I got to improve. So like load management would be huge there. The interesting thing is like, I heard Quincy be like, oh, I got to work on my hamstrings when I'm trying to build up my deadlift. And to me, it's like, I'm not saying that couldn't be a thing, but to me, I don't feel like the hamstrings are the biggest puller in that position. And I would assume that your glutes would be way more of a demand if you're if it's that powerful, right? Just based on the anatomy, what the hamstring's doing, it's trying to actually force, knee flexion. There is a hamstring that crosses the hip and it causes hip extension, so it would help with that. But most of it, I would imagine, would be weakness in your glutes themselves, or quads, or form, right? Like those would be the things. And then when you mention about the sumo for people to understand is, you know, wider stance, and you just literally do drive off your quads. And you mentioned this about my sumo. It's like I'm fucking slow off the ground, but then somehow I get it. And so as long as I'm getting into those quads off the bottom, then I know I'm going to get it.
Yeah, and I will say with sumo in particular, when people in sumo, your failing point should be off the floor. I feel like if you're failing at lockout nearly every time, there's an illusion of like your quad. Your people might think this might be true, but people automatically assume that like your glutes are weak in the sumo. But it could also be the fact that like your positioning, you got out of position early in the sumo, and then you can't muscle through it. That's the unfortunate thing about sumo. You can't really. It's hard to muscle through a sumo. You can muscle through a
You
conventional.
can get people to kind of the wiggle it up their legs and then lock out at the top.
You can muscle out a conventional. It's hard to muscle a sumo if you're in a position.
Totally. No, that makes sense. All the hardest, as soon as you're past your like the first quarter, it's going to go up.
It should be done.
Past first quarter to a third, you should, because you have all the leverage there. It's so close to your body. And then on the conventional, you mentioned this. Typically, it'd be people in the sumo don't get it at the start, and typically in conventional they don't get it at the top, because that's where all the tension happens at the top, right? So it makes sense. Now, two more thoughts here, because as much I chat with you about this all day. Any thoughts on how you felt about the competition that I had there? That, you know, I know it's been a while, almost 8 months. Any thoughts about how you felt the competition went? As I mentioned to you, I do hope to do more in the future, but I'm just curious, quick little debrief, your thoughts, how you felt about it.
Your most recent competition, because we didn't really go into full depth about that, I am extremely happy with your individual performance, because once again, it's you versus you at the end of the day. You hit PRs in every lift. You did a really good competitive thing. We also played the game where, you know, like we're changing attempts, things like that, to try to battle for that first. Yeah, and at the end of the day, the other lifter kind of just pulled it out of his ass. You can kind of say it like that. And he got the lift, and not taking anything away from him, like he just did it. So that's just how it is. If you have, like for you, for example, there's two different kinds of lifters for powerlifting. Typically, you're going to have the guy with a good squat and bench, and maybe a little bit weaker of a deadlift. Deadlift is your strength by far, but this individual, he was also a guy with a really big deadlift, just like you. And it's always like the squat and the bench press versus the deadlifter kind of component with two guys. And no matter what, every competition, the athlete with the bigger deadlift is going to load what they need to put on the bar to win, right? You were winning the whole time going into that last deadlift. He took a risk. He loaded what he needed to put on the bar, and he got it. And for him, I think it was like a 30-pound PR. Like, it was huge. And I was surprised. He was surprised. Like, everyone was kind of surprised, and it was exciting. So, like, hats off to him. He did it.
Hats off.
And for us, we were in a position where we were forcing him to PR his deadlift no matter what. So it's like, how much more of a big jump should we do on deadlift? So we did a smaller jump on deadlift just to extend that lead even further, which forced him to lift even heavier. So it's kind of a weird balancing out. I think I wouldn't change anything for what we did.
No.
It was just very close, and he hit a really good lift at the end of the day when he needed it. So,
and the way it kind of worked out, like, we could have argued that maybe I could have done more in squat, but we wouldn't have known that, so we couldn't have, right? We did what we know we could do. The bench we got away with, because that bench PR did go down from the right angle. Yeah. 1 flagged, 2 greens. Yeah. So I got fucking...
Bench was 10 out of 10.
It was fucking lucky. And then the third one was where, like, because the bench actually exhausted me, because I was so tired from that grind, that was a hard sumo. And if I didn't grind that bench so much that I fucking arched my back so hard, like, it's amazing.
And that is what you just described, like, part of competing. Sometimes you going a 10 out of 10 squat and a 10 out of 10 bench isn't the best, because now you're not gonna, you've bled energy away from your deadlift. And deadlift is the lift where percentage wise of your total weight lifted, you're going to get it from the deadlift. So
Yeah.
maybe taking it like 10 pounds less in your squat, 5 pounds less in your bench to gain 20 more pounds in your deadlift, that's advantageous.
I think it was really cool to see the game. The first time I saw it, I wasn't worried about it in the first competition because I was just like, I was there to compete. I was just having fun, but we came in third, which was, hey, that's cool. But we weren't worried. And then in the next one, to actually see how the game played out was pretty cool. And like you say, hats off to him because as mad as I want to be, it was like, but he just pulled a rabbit out of the fucking hat here. And we did hit PRs all the way through. So, and again, it keeps me hungry in the sport. As I mentioned to you, I've never had more fun actually competing in an event because boxing, fucking stressful all day.
It's a fight for your life, literally.
Well, no, actually, you know what's more stressful than the actual event is the thought of the event.
Yeah.
Is all day, all week, like it's stress in your head, self-doubt constantly. You get in there and it's stress, but you're so in the moment that you're not thinking the stress, you're surviving, right? You're competing. And there's actually more calmness in that than there is before. And then after is fucking cloud nine. So it goes from high stress to just cloud nine. Bodybuilding is actually pretty fun in the first 2/3. Last third, last little bit, you have to grind, and it's the most miserable experience. That is the hardest thing because it's not just hard for a workout. Every day of your life, getting in and out of chairs is exhausting because you're so depleted.
Everything gets challenged, like your work, your relationship,
Everything,
day-to-day,
everything.
because you're just not the same person.
Yeah, the competition is fun because you're having carbs that day, but it's also not fun for me to stand and pose. Like, I don't love that. I'm doing it for the sport, right? So the fun part of going to powerlifting, and I said it in the first one, and I felt the exact same way in the second. It was one of your clients, Nicole. She's like, when I did my first competition, I got hooked. And I was like, I wonder what she's talking about because I didn't know what to expect. And I felt like, even though I didn't know anyone, it was a welcoming community, and you're just lifting with your bros, doing 1 rep maxes.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, hey, everyone's hyped. The energy is amazing. Both competitions were like that. Now, bear in mind, I went 3 for 3 twice. Like for both competitions, and I'll bomb out.
Hitting PRs in every lift both times.
I'm going to have a positive experience. And if I missed one, I might hit that harder. But like fucking the funnest process and competition. So I definitely want to come back in the future.
And what's even more fun too, like flip the switch. Imagine if you were in the other guy's position and you needed to pull that weight for the win. Being in that position is even more fun because then it's like
now you got me jealous.
Then it's like hey Rylan, like we need this last deadlift. This is for the win.
Do or die.
You're literally the last one lifting for the competition.
That was the last competition.
Yeah, because you had like the second last deadlift, but he had the last deadlift. That determined if he was like, I think if he didn't make that lift, he might have got like third, but that was like for first or third, depending on that result.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny because I had some of my clients come watch me and he's like, you're so calm up there. And I was like, I prefer to do a lift that I can be calm for, but when a bar's on me, I'm fucking going.
Yeah.
I just don't like one of your guys that you smack the back of, and it's like, I don't want to require that for my lifting.
Yeah.
I remember Quinn before his competition you helped him with, he was like, when I went up to that deadlift, I was like, I'm going to break my back or it's going to lift. And I'm like, would I do that? No. Like, I'm sorry. I actually am trying to sell this sport to people that it's a healthy thing you can do long term. If I break my back in competition, I'm not really selling it well. I believe that powerlifting, in your same mantra, can be done smart. You can make PRs effortless, and you're still going to challenge things that are scary, but it doesn't have to be stupid.
Yeah.
So let's leave off with a quick discussion, on yourself. What are you really excited coming down the pipeline, and tell people about the Keystone event because that comes into the spring, right?
We're actually not doing it this year.
Oh shit! Sorry, I was hoping to give you a plug.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's because the other meet director of us has like a big career change, and he's in Regina.
Oh, okay.
For like the next 6 months. So like all like the prep work and planning, it's just unrealistic for this year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll be back. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else that you're really excited coming down the pipeline? Any your athletes, anything like that?
Honestly, I have an athlete, Alex Clayton, who's kind of like refurbished his career. I've been coaching him like for the last 7 years, but he didn't compete for like a 5-year stint. And he just competed recently. I flew out to Alberta because he lives in Edmonton. So I flew out a couple of months ago to coach him. And he blew the doors off, like got best lifter at the competition. He's your weight class.
Oh shit.
So he squatted 660 and he bench pressed 440 and he deadlifted, I think, like 720.
Okay.
Very
Makes me very humble.
very strong guy, and
Yeah.
we have aspirations of like doing regionals, doing nationals, and then maybe
Yeah.
like competing at the highest level we can with that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so
And hearing those numbers, I actually appreciate it. It's an ego blow in a good way. It's like, that's why it has to be you versus you. So I'm going to be proud of when I can get to the 1,500-pound club. But like, unless you're going to be in the sport for like decades, it's just like, own your own weights.
Yeah.
Because you're going to hear those numbers and they're going to completely make you think that you don't belong in the sport when you do, but it has to be you versus you.
The biggest difference between you and him is the fact that he's been doing it for longer. That's it. So,
yeah. And I think I do want to get into it long term. It's just got to get the injuries sorted out first. But thank you so much, Kurtis. Mostly done, but we'll do another one in the future.
Perfect.
When I'm ready to go back to competition.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Kurtis. That was an awesome conversation. Always love chatting with him. Ever since we had our very first chat on the first episode, it was something I really connected with him on. We had a lot of similar values when it came to just making powerlifting simple. And, one of the things I really tried to amplify in this episode for you, right off the bat, he's like, anyone can powerlift and kind of be a power lifter if you want. I really recommend, if you didn't listen to the first interview, episode 74 with Kurtis was terrific. And we really talked about how easy getting strong can be. And it's an easy hard. It's still hard. You're still bracing a heavy load. We're trying to get into super physiological weights, as I always try to say. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be complete life or death. It actually shouldn't be, if we're going to try to do it in a healthy way. And that's who I was trying to speak to more, was the healthy person who wants to be really strong. You're not necessarily trying to hit powerlifting goals like I am. Maybe you do, but even then, if you do, you can do it in a healthy way. As I mentioned, I'm not willing to break my back for the sake of the deadlift. I'm willing to push myself. I'm willing to really challenge myself. If I think there's a real massive injury risk, I'm going to step away. And I have pushed myself to injuries before, so I'm kind of familiar with what that looks like. But Kurtis gave some great prescriptions there to really consider. It's hard maybe to figure out what your 1 rep max might be on a bench press or whatever it is, but ballpark it and work your way up. And as we mentioned, maybe you never have to do a 1 rep max test, and you just start to recognize, hey, in this theoretical 75% of my 1 rep max, it's getting easy to do 6 to 8 reps. So then increase by 5%. And then you continue to slowly increase, each month, each week. And I'll give you a bit more kind of exercise prescription that I would recommend as far as those kind of prescriptions. So as we mentioned, like looking up Jim Wedler, 531, really good protocol. But I'll give you a really simple way based on what, Kurtis had said, what I really believe too, overlapping with like kind of ramp up schemes. I'm a really big fan of ramp up schemes. And so you start with something around 65% of the 1 rep, and you do anywhere from 5 to 8 reps. You do your next set 5% more. You do your next set 5% more, and that puts you up to about 75%. Maybe you're doing 4 sets, and then you do another 5% more, and then that's it for the first week. And you're always trying to give 2 to 3 reps in reserve. The next week, do everything 5% more. And again, live 2 to 3 reps in reserve. The week after, 5% more. Again, 2 to 3 reps in reserve. And on the 4th week, it depends on the person, but usually about the 4th week, you can do one more hard like that, wrapping at 5%. But don't be afraid to bring down your reps as you're increasing your weight and your intensity if you don't feel confident in the form. Then I would do what I like to call a mini deload, like not a full deload, because I think most people don't need a fully deload unless they're doing very high training volumes. But you basically just bring it down to week 1 intensity and reps in reserve. And so I will go back to week 1, and you're going to see if you can do the same weight again, but more reps, or you can start at the 70% mark and then again ramp up 5% each week. And so that gives you like a little bit of a framework of like, okay, following percentages, have some reps in reserve, be in a rep range of anywhere from 5 to 8 on these lifts, and make it hard, but make it feel easy to do a hard thing. And that's what's going to make it safe. And it's going to make it effective because we talk so much about how technique is the key. I'll mention that like Kurtis is mostly a load manager. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like he certainly corrected my form on the bench press. He certainly corrected my form on the back squat and on the deadlift. But it wasn't like massive differences. It was like subtle little tips on how to get a leg drive, how to make sure that you're, especially in the bench. He definitely altered my bench a lot to really get a solid leg drive to brace properly. He definitely gave me some simple cues in the back squat. He's like, pack your neck, and that really helps. And big breath, and the cues of just you get 3 steps when you step out on a back squat. Like these things that a powerlifting coach would know. Whereas like I used to like wobble a bunch, and that actually throws you off. And then recognizing things like on the deadlift, like if you're a sumo squatter, you get a couple inches off the ground and you can't move it, that's probably where it's not going to go. And if you're a conventional lifter, it'll probably be higher up. So recognizing those kind of like problems, areas to be paying attention to and to not force through if you can't do it well. But then from there, he just managed my load extremely well. So we were rarely ever we didn't do anything in the prep that pushed me to 10 out of 10 except for one set of bench. One set of bench that he said, do as many as you can, because he wanted to test me. That wasn't a 1 rep. That was like a 4 rep max. And then I made sure I got a spot. And he said, do as best you can, but don't die. That was actually his prescription. And it worked well because then I hit a PR. And just imagine that you're hitting PRs in the 3-4 rep range, and you're just never risking that 1 rep max consequence. No one training session, might have said in the podcast, I can't remember. No one training session ever got you significantly stronger. But one bad rep can ruin your workout career and your health. So always see that there's a risk-reward ratio. And I do encourage you to do this if you're really excited to be as strong as you can. And you know, me and Kurtis agreed right off the bat. Powerlifting is not necessarily even like the fundamental squat, bench, and dead. It's someone who wants to be very powerful and thinking about metrics that you can find a form of progression over time. That's fundamentally it. And, you know, it's like, hey, I use the Smith machine, but I progress that over time. I'm fucking happy with it. Some other hardline fucking, oh, that's not powerlifting, bro. It's like, fuck them. Just do what makes sense for you. I want you to have a pursuit that you're excited about. Try to PR your incline bench. That's kind of more badass. It's super unstable and really difficult to do. Try to PR Bulgarian split squats with dumbbells. That's way harder for most people because those hurt so much and you get so much soreness from them. So it's a matter of wanting to be stronger and progress over time and measuring it. And I hope that's something you really take with you from this episode. Anyone can be a powerlifter. You just have to show up for it. That's another big thing that we really talked about, the long game. And he mentioned about right at the end of the episode, difference between me and the other guy is that he's just been in longer. He's just been in the game longer. And when you're in the game long enough, just incredible things can happen because you're so skilled at the movement. And so you got to see it as certainly intensity, but more about skill. And no different than someone showing up on the golf swing or showing up on how to throw 3 points in basketball. A hockey player working on the wrist shot. Like, it's that accuracy and explosiveness that you're trying to do. And so that's what's happening in powerlifting. That's why someone who's at 130 pounds can bench press 3 times their body weight. And so always recognize that if you show up, you can do incredible things. And I hope some of the advice around some of the weaknesses really helped outside of just proper intensity prescription. I think, again, that's probably where most people's weaknesses lie. And being willing to still pick apart your form a little bit. Pick apart the form on the bench press, especially. A lot of people will have wide elbows. You can have wider elbows, but the elbow positioning, in my opinion, should be in front of the wrist or right underneath it because you have a certain kind of line of force where you're trying to drive it. The weight lowers in front of you, kind of along your nip line, and then it drives up over your shoulder line. And it's a very important thing on how to do that with your arms, but also to have your legs then brace that so you're not unstable. And so you feel the leg drive. Then from the back squat, as he had mentioned, making sure that the core is strong enough and making sure the upper back is strong enough. As he had mentioned, the back backs you up for every single one of these movements, but definitely, surprisingly, the back squat. Not surprisingly, it's inherent to the name, right? And that from there, it's just making sure you have good form. Don't fall out of your form. Make sure you find a way that you're strong. Some people say, have your toes out. Some people have feet in. It's like everyone squats different. Everyone has different hips. So you want to program the one that makes the most sense for you. Similar to the deadlift, as we mentioned. It doesn't matter if it's conventional or it's sumo. It matters to what feels better for you. And choose the one that feels better for you that you're going to want to show up for. And let's say you're trying to be recreational. Like you don't really care to hit a powerlifting meet someday. I'm actually a huge advocate for the trap bar for that reason. So the trap bar is like a safe way to overload because there is more safety risk when it has to do with the conventional. And the trap bar sets you a little bit higher, also puts your hands beside you. And so you can do heavy force in a very safe way that doesn't take a ton of skill in order to program the movement. But if you're saying, hey, I kind of want to get good at the conventional, totally fine. Or if you just don't care, then choose one that you want to get good at. Like, I recently, chatted with a guy I'm working with now, and I was like, do you care if you get good at the power deadlift? He's like, no, I like barbell RDLs. Let's fucking load the RDL. That's a strong hip hinge. Again, can we have a strength metric that we're getting better at? It's your choice. It's your journey. And the weight belt. Hopefully you watch my content enough and you actually appreciated the humor to that. The weightlifting belt bro that'll go around the gym wearing the belt for everything. Don't agree with that. Some people are going to do it. And it's like, it's not the end of the world. I don't hate it. I feel bad for the person because maybe they're not doing enough for their core to appreciate what that belt could do for them. And there's an appropriate time for that belt. And maybe you're actually losing abdominal strength because you're relying too much on the feeling of the belt. But there is definitely a purpose for it. As we had mentioned in the episode, it made a difference for my back, surprisingly. I started to notice when I was at, the end of getting fatigued in certain sets, my back might cramp because I'm trying to kind of arch my back more. And so then he's like, oh, try a belt. And then put it on, and it's braced a bit more and it didn't feel my back. Well, can't tell me that didn't help, right? It's definitely something for the back squat I recommend when you're getting into, this is my thing I said in the episode, I'm pretty sure it's like, it is super physiological weights. Like once you're more than your body weight and things, more than body weight and bench press, if your back feels it, if you're more than 1.5 your body weight, I'm going to ballpark here in squat, or you're 2 times your body weight in deadlift. Like these are ranges that I think it would make a lot of sense for someone to start using a belt. I recommend someone try to go as long as they can without it. And then if they feel like, yeah, I feel comfortable here, I'm going to try to use it, then use it. Or if you want to use it sooner, that's fine, use it. But I do think you should try to train your core first and to really work on that bracing. If you haven't seen the video, go check out my Instagram. Don't be a weightlifting belt bro, because it actually is intended on being a very good tutorial on how to properly brace. I didn't know how to properly brace. I had a ton of back issues when I was back squatting for a while. It was like my hip and my back were getting so tight, so sore, and I didn't know why. It was constantly like a crazy back pump I was getting. And then finally someone showed me how to orient my rib cage with a good breath. And I don't feel my low back. I don't feel this issue on back squats. And this is a bit of a continuous error that we end up having in the training industry in general when people are trying to learn the back squat or to learn the squat period. And so many other patterns require you to have some sort of a low back arch, right? So that's lordosis. And if you want that, let's say you're doing a bent over row or you're doing a back fly, we want that low back arch to make sure we're not hunching in our upper back when we get too much, rounding of the spine. And so we're very worried about that. The deadlifts, we're like, we don't want that low back round. And so then you think so much of arch, arch, arch. Now, when you have a barbell on your back, it's actually really easy to want to arch because the back's kind of throwing you into there. And then all that tightness, and this was shown in the video, is in the low back because you're not bracing and using the abdominal muscles from the front. And the abdominal muscles from the front are stabilizing and almost pushing up on your rib cage in order to give you some stability from the front of the rib cage or from the spine. Rather, if someone's just worried about the arch and they're not bracing from the front, the low back is really just pulling everything back with no anterior support, no support from this front. But if you have both the back support and underneath your abdominal wall support, you're going to notice like almost no back pain when you're doing something like a back squat. And that's just something to cue you on most things. Like when we talk about bracing core, it's not just about that low back and the posture. It's about having, some coaches don't like the term air in your stomach because you don't have lungs in your stomach. I do like it because it cues people to push the air down in their diaphragm. Push it down, almost force yourself to have a powerlifter belly, and then feel like that rib cage is down, and then just hold that tight. You do something called the Valsalva maneuver, because you don't want to constantly brace and not breathe, because that'll cause so much blood pressure tension, you'll get faint. So at the top of a squat, let's say we're doing heavy squats, by the way, like other reps, you might be able to breathe even more loosely. But let's say we're doing a heavy squat. At the top, right before you start to load, let's even go from the rack. You go to, right before you unrack, big breath in, then pick up the weight. And as Kurtis says, you have like 3 steps back, 1 foot back, 2nd foot back, 3rd one to adjust. And so from there, we've kind of, whittled ourselves into a position that we can now squat. Now take another breath. And because you now know where the load's going to feel. Take another breath. You're now loaded again, a little extra tightness. Then you go down, descend, keep the tightness. And then on the way up, and some guys will be like, right? That little grunt. Now you don't have to grunt, but just let it a little bit, then rebrace. This is, again, really heavy loads. Now, if I'm doing something like, let's say it's a reverse lunge, I might let it out more steadily and then rebrace. So it's important that you have a nice little mixture in some of the movements. Hopefully that helps. There's only so much I can do to describe on a podcast, but that helps a little bit as far as the bracing goes. And I just want to highlight what we talked about, how effective something like a plank, a weighted plank can be. We said weighted, and some people, man, their core is so weak, you got to do a plank. People hate on planks. And I think like every exercise that's an actual like kind of fundamental exercise, not everything people call exercise is useful, but every fundamental exercise is there for a reason. Like a plank is still a good movement. It's just like, I can do a plank for more than a minute or 2 minutes. It's not something that I'm interested in because I don't need 2 to 5 minutes of plank endurance in my life. I need to be able to brace for about 20 to 30 seconds, maybe less. So that's why putting the load on the back actually really helps. That was something I had actually done in my exercise prescription prior to working with Kurtis, as I was doing loaded plank positions to get used to that bracing. And like, it's just a hard setup. So I do recommend you experiment with an ab wheel or a barbell rollout, because that's huge anterior stretch and like a lot of bracing itself. I'm actually a fan of even carries. And carries are a technical thing to be able to get like a good goblet carry on your core, but I'll roughly try to describe it. You grab something that's like a heavy weight. It's going to be hard on your arms, but we also want it hard on our core. And so to do that, you almost got to put like let's say it's a 50, maybe a 75, but you goblet it in front of you, but away from you. So it's going to be hard on the arms still, which isn't bad. Core's, the upper body being strained is okay, but we want to feel it in our core more. So pushing it away a little bit, and the way that I kind of try to explain it, if you're listening to the podcast, not watching, is you want to imagine how your arms are situated when you do a plank. That's how you're moving in a walking pattern, holding the weight in a goblet. So my palms are underneath the weight in a goblet position, but the elbows are up and the weight is far out. And you'll actually feel, whoa, it's got away from me. My low back actually feels it a little bit. And your core is going to feel it more. Then that big brace, rib cage down, and try to walk a little bit with it. And that little instability is what we're going to try to challenge. There's also just any form of carries are good. You could do overhead carries are really good for upper back posture. And again, rib cage down as you walk, super awkward, but good awkward. You can do front rack position, great for my boxers, because similar kind of plank position, but now they're lighter weights, and we do focus a bit more on shoulders, and we keep the elbows in. That's great for the shoulder endurance and core and posture. Then there is just single arm carries. Huge fan of single arm farmer carries. Single arm farmer carries make it really heavy on one side. That's going to work your hip. It's going to work your trap. It's going to work your grip. Other side, you can go back and forth, and just heavy farmer carries. But those have to be, again, really heavy in order to get the stimulus you want. I really recommend you mess around with barbell farmer carries, because if you have heavy enough dumbbells that like, hey, that exhausts my grip, great. But if you do like a barbell one, they kind of twist so much. They're like highly erratic. So that's a great one that you can like challenge your grip, and then like you don't have to grab like the heaviest dumbbells, because sometimes you don't have heavy enough dumbbells, and then kind of the instability in the fingers, the end fingers, it really works good. Another little one, if you don't remember, that Kurtis had mentioned for grip strength, he had mentioned, and I still haven't done this challenge, I gotta do it. Grab a tennis ball, you do 100 reps per finger squeezing the tennis ball, each and every single finger, and then 100 reps right all together, all of them, and you're going to find out which finger or the thumb is the weakest. And you do that, I think you said for 2 weeks straight. I'm not a big fan of every day. I'm always a fan of every other day. So I would do that every other day for maybe 4 weeks, right? Because then you get the full load. But I think there's something to high training frequency of just the output. So something I would challenge, because I have noticed my grip's a little bit weaker these days. Hopefully that episode gives you a lot of knowledge on powerlifting and how you could be an everyday powerlifter, having fun with strength, having fun getting strong, because there can be fun with it. And I always believe that the best thing that you get from exercise actually isn't the health of just a healthy body. It's not just the health of being able to move strong weight. It's showing up and doing something that has a form of resistance. And I mean that mentally. I believe that strength training makes you a strong person. If you want to do it, it's a way to practice that every day and to go after something you're really excited for. If you don't want to do it, it's even more effective to making you a strong person, because you're doing something you don't want to do. So to me, the best thing about strength training is what it does to your character. So I really encourage you see yourself as a powerlifter, someone who wants to be strong physically and mentally. And hopefully this episode actually helped you out. If you're interested in competitive powerlifting, I do recommend you give Kurtis Tallaire a call, because he was a terrific coach for me, very supportive, and he knows his stuff. And I leave his Instagram handle in the show notes, and you can always reach out to him. And I hope this episode helped you. So as always, I'm going to encourage you to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment if you get some value from this, because it goes a real long way. And share this with someone that you know loves powerlifting, because that'll make a big difference for this to grow. And hopefully it helps a friend that really loves powerlifting and wants to get stronger. But more importantly, as always, I'm going to thank you for listening, because I appreciate you taking your time and being a continued loyal listener, because I'm always just trying to help you chase your own ambition, because we know life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.